Hello and welcome to Healing Tips from the Heart, Intuition with Helpers, Healers, and Guides. I am your host, Dr. Lori Hops, licensed psychologist, writer, and artist. I've explored mind, body, and spirit related to intuition, or your personal guidance system, since early childhood. Meet my guests who have learned from their personal and professional lives to explore vast realms of knowing, synchronicities, and overcoming challenges. Their stories may inspire you with tools to enhance your daily living and relationships. Hello, everyone, and welcome my special guest, Kerri Vercellini, licensed mental health counselor. She is a holistic healer who works with intuitive education with her private clients and community, and owns and operates Awaken Holistic Counseling Services. She's trained as a psychotherapist, holistic healer, and coach, and as a community educator and a certified Reiki practitioner. She's also an emotional freedom technique practitioner and is a director of the board for the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, which is where I met her many years ago and work with her now. Kerri thrives as an adult with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and she aims to empower, model, and encourage others to finally step into their greatness. Thank you so much for joining me today, Kerri.
Thank you for having me.
It's so great to see you. Thank you. And I know you also have a specialty working with children and youth, which is not so common, especially with energy practitioners. And so I'd love to hear more about that. But is there anything you'd like to add that you'd like the audience to know about you?
So I'm based in Massachusetts. I also just got my license in New Hampshire. So I work in both Massachusetts and New Hampshire.
Okay.
And will hopefully be moving over to New Hampshire for long-term, where I will expand my business even to bigger with other employees at some point, hopefully. So I can bring this information and make a hub for the community to come to. And I live with my husband and my new daughter, who will be 1 year old this year. So now with another perspective on raising kids with an intuitive background, I can already tell she's a little bit more kind of keen into things. So it'll be interesting to see as how that develops as a parent, as well as working with children. And I've worked with children for many, many years, as far back as when I was in a camp as a counselor of 10 girls under the age of 10 for 11 days overnight. That was quite an experience. But I had great time with them during that experience. And then I went on to work with kids in my pre-licensure work and have since continued working with children, and now specialize more with kids who tend to find me, or parents who tend to find me with children who are more sensitive to energy. And so I really enjoy bringing them new awareness and new tools that are non-invasive and non-medication based to help kids figure out how to take control over how they're feeling and get to being more balanced and more centered as a person.
I love it. I see. Thanks for telling the audience and myself a little bit about your background. And of course, your daughter, we celebrate. She was the first board baby. Yeah. I think in the history of ACEP on the board in 25 years to have a board member have a baby during their tenure. So we welcome her as an unofficial member.
Yes. She loves seeing everybody there.
And interesting, I was a camp counselor too. And I was just last night I was thinking about that because I'm planning a new talk that I'd like to give at a conference with embodied intuition and using the body with movement. And I remember that song, Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes, eyes and ears and mouth and nose. Yeah. And trying to integrate like the body parts with the sensory awareness.
Mhm.
And so that's like a cool way to kind of teach kids how to like use what's natural to them,
Mm,
to kind of have a more fine-tuned awareness. But
mhm.
what are some of the tips or things that you bring to help teach the youth that you work with?
Yeah, so I work with kids as young as 6, and
Okay.
then I do work with kids all the way up until they're adults now. So I have right now I have probably more teenagers than younger ones, but in the past I have worked with younger ones who, and I actually have one right now. So you have to go slower with them because they're still not only are kids in general just a little bit more cautious about, new people in general,
Yeah.
adults, and then new things. So
Mhm.
when you are introducing something as unique as energy practices, they're maybe a little bit more wary. So I actually work with even things like crystals. So crystals are a really good kind of easy energy opener for children. And I
Mhm.
and I find that the kids that come to me already usually have an awareness of crystals, but
Mhm.
they may not use them. So that's one of the things that I start to recommend. And I have them kind of, because I have in my space a lot of crystals. I'm like, you go, tell me which one's your favorite. Which one do you think you like the most, or the best, or whatever.
Yeah.
And oh, you can hold on to it while you're here if you want. So we kind of sneak in some experiential stuff with them just to get used to that.
Uh-huh.
And then if they're aware enough, and some kids, are a little ahead of the game mentally and emotionally compared to some others similar age. So depending on their maturity level, I usually will figure out, can they handle learning an actual skill? Will they need to go a little bit slower and have it be more about fun?
Mhm.
It really kind of depends on their openness. Uh,
Okay.
so, so I would approach things usually with parents involved too, because a
Mhm.
lot of kids are very shy at first or might feel a little bit unsure of doing stuff that I recommend unless their parent is there as kind of a filter to be like, yeah, no, let's try this together. So we might do practices where we're doing cross crawls, body stuff to
Can
help
you
kind of
can you
repattern the brain and
yeah, let me just slow you down a little bit. We have
yeah.
members of our audience who are watching and others who are listening only, and
Hmm.
they may or may not know these techniques. So if you could
Okay.
describe it as if they can't see what you're doing,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
and I'll jump in if I see like a little thing that might be able to help explain. But
Okay.
you mentioned the cross crawl.
Yes. So crossing our body from elbow or hand over our midline in our body, and then the other side, same thing. So you cross your arms over each other over the midline, one at a time. That would be the upper part of the body. Or if you are standing,
Mm-hmm.
you would take your right hand to your left knee, raising your left knee, and then left hand to right knee. And you
Mm-hmm.
do that multiple times.
Mm-hmm. So you're
So
tapping your knee
so you're
gently,
tapping your knee gently.
and you can do that
You
seated
can do
too,
that
right?
seated. Yep.
Yep.
And then to throw in a little bit of fun, I also will, with kids when they're standing, I'll make them do the back ones. So I'll make them reach from the behind with the opposite. So you take
Okay.
your right hand to your left foot, left hand to your right foot, and make
Uh-huh.
them do that because it helps to really kind of get them in their body a little bit more when they're
Okay.
not just doing the front one.
Okay,
So
cool. And
really
what's
good.
the benefit of that series of exercises?
From what I understand, and I will say I'm not an expert on this, from what I understand, it does help to reconnect the brain hemispheres a little bit better. So if there is some disorganization happening, if there is some stumbling speech, that it can help to just calm things down and synchronize things a little bit better. So,
Great.
so with kids, I have an autistic child that I work with too, that seems to at least get them a little bit more talking in a line instead of kind of bouncing around.
Uh-huh.
So I've done that with him. And, hyperactive children tend to do well with, body movement stuff. So I'll do
Yeah.
that with them as well.
Okay. And
Mhm.
then how long should you do it for?
Well, it depends on their focus level also. So, if you've got an ADHD child or, just a lot of energy child, then you don't want any practices to be too long because they'll lose interest. So maybe, that practice itself only takes a minute to do. So it's
Okay.
a really easy thing for people to do with a child.
Okay. So for about a minute, and you can do it throughout the day, or?
You could do it throughout the day. I do it when I'm in the session with them. So
Mhm.
if it helps to get them kind of more focused in the beginning, we may not need to do it again. If
Okay.
they start getting off track again, and I remember to do it again, I might do it again with them if they
Yeah.
start getting off track. Mhm.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
that tip.
Mhm.
Yeah. So working with autistic kids, so do you work with the parents too, or
The
just the
parents
children?
are typically involved in a lot of my sessions just
Uh-huh.
because I do find too the younger the child, the harder it is for them to verbally kind of describe what's going on. So
Yep.
I will, in my practice, I choose to allow the parents to be a little bit more involved because I find that I get more accurate information from them,
Yep.
or even just like background of like what's been happening. And, no child wants to go into somewhere, especially with somebody who's still somewhat of a stranger potentially,
Yeah.
and tell them like all the things that they were doing that maybe they're not so proud of.
Yeah. Of
So
course.
I do need to, have the parents come in and kind of give me some background on what's been going on, and then open up a non-confrontational dialogue with the children about, oh, what do you think might have made that choice?
Yeah.
Or, just trying to be non-judgmental with them and be like, oh, well, what went through your head when that was going on, type of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they tend to open up a little bit more when I frame things like that. And then it helps us to figure out what adjustments we need to make and what tools might be appropriate for those situations.
Love it. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
great. I worked for many years doing psychological testing for attention deficit
Mhm.
disorders and learning differences, learning disabilities and stuff, and in kids and also in adults and college students. And I was so surprised at how there was seemed to be an overlap that I was observing between a high sensitivity
Mhm.
to, let's say, sensation,
Mm.
to other people's emotion, to changes in the environment, sometimes changes in the weather,
Mhm.
and body changes, hormonal changes, and kids and adults who were labeled with these different learning
Mhm.
differences. And that was just when there started to be more awareness
Mm.
of the overlap in these populations.
Mhm.
And not everyone who's sensitive or intuitive has learning differences and vice versa,
Mhm.
but there is a lot of overlap.
Mhm.
And so I started to pull in some of my awareness on how I worked as a sensitive person for myself,
Mhm.
and the little bit that I was already learning in the field to
Mhm.
kind of help just get them focused enough to get through the psychological testing
Yep.
sessions,
Mhm.
and giving them breaks and drinking water more often, and moving around and just kind of watching their energy level and kind of matching it.
Yep.
So there was like I guess it was kind of like a lab for me to learn more about intuition
Mhm.
by working with that population. And it surprised me because I wasn't expecting that
Mm. Mhm.
overlap.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I definitely am an intuitive therapist as well. I consider myself an empath, and
Uh-huh.
I actually specialize in working with empathic and in highly sensitive people. So
Mhm.
that's why partly I feel like I draw children who are a little bit more sensitive, parents who are hyper aware of, well, if I go to somebody who's more traditional, they're going to want to just put my kid on medication.
Uh-huh.
And my kid's overstimulated, maybe they've got a lot of anxiety and they don't know how to manage this, they're having panic attacks and stuff like that. But they don't want to just bring them to a regular doctor or a regular therapist who's going to say, let's put them on a pill
Yeah.
for, whatever is going on.
Uh-huh.
So they'll come to me, and I'll first evaluate them. I have my traditional background, but I have my holistic approach as well. So I will first evaluate them from kind of the background that they provide, and then not automatically place a label on them. And if they seem to say enough information, symptoms that could relate to being highly sensitive or empathic, then I evaluate them directly for that.
Okay.
And so using, and I know we don't have too much yet to be able to, formally evaluate highly
Yeah.
sensitive and empathic people. So one of the things that I use as a guide for that, and then use my own intuition to support the guide, is a piece of paper that I believe Jeanette Foley presented at our ACEP conference years ago on Are You a Highly Sensitive Person? It had a list of a lot of different symptoms and potential themes of things going on that highly sensitive people may be reactive to. So I use that as the guide, and then from there, I will further evaluate intuitively whether or not that seems to resonate with what I'm detecting of the situation and whether or not that resonates with them. So the first thing I detect is it resonating with them? Is this kind of making some light bulbs go on in their head?
Yeah.
And then I use that to help them to understand that if this is true, and we don't have any actual way of being 100% sure because there's no real testing available, if this is potentially true about you, this could mean this may be more about what's going on versus this other thing. And would that make sense for you? And a lot of people seem to feel relieved a little bit when they find out that they're more of an energy sensitive person potentially, because we have energy practices. And this is what I, explain to them. Energy sensitive people, I have observed, respond the best to energy based modalities.
Yes.
So, if that is the treatment course of action, we have a lot that we can do for it. And they seem to find some relief in that awareness.
That's so great. I love that you're doing that. And when I teach embodied intuition classes online, I have a questionnaire that people use at the first class to kind of figure out where their intuitive strengths and weaknesses are naturally. And so I had to kind of come up with my own. I borrowed and modified questionnaires from other people, but that would be really cool to have more of a measures that are empirically validated for this. Can you give a couple of examples of things that you see commonly for sensitive and empathic people?
So what are the most common things? Definitely feeling overwhelmed by crowds. And being around too many people is one of the most ticked off things in those measures. Then also being sensitive to other people's energies or feelings is another one. And they don't realize it until I point that out that might be happening, and then they're like, oh yeah, no, I didn't think about that. There's a lot of self-awareness that's taught in the midst of doing some of these kind of evaluations. Even if they're not empirically validated, they're still anecdotal at the very least, and that they're helpful to have for reflection. And so those two are big things. And then what's another one?
What about sensory sensitivity? Like light, sound?
Sometimes that does come up. Actually, for adults, what comes up a lot too is being sensitive to alcohol and drugs.
Oh, okay.
So that comes up a lot too, where people who I work with who are maybe more highly sensitive find that they feel awful after using any sort of alcohol, especially, or any sort of drug, even sometimes pharmaceuticals, that they feel like their body is completely out of whack after trying to use a pharmaceutical. So that's when we have conversations about resources and other things that they could potentially pursue and look into more on their own. We talk more about the energy practices. We talk more about maybe working with a naturopath. We talk more about maybe seeking out support with a homeopath and looking at those more subtle energy things, or learning about flower essences or essential oils that could be supportive. And, I just kind of, here is the resource and you do with it what you're going to do.
And sometimes it's a hit and miss, and it can change over time, just like allergies can come and go with different things. Like, oh, I was only allergic to white flour, but now I'm allergic to sweet potatoes, so like, well, where did that come from? It just came up all of a sudden. So sometimes the combination of treatments also shifts over time. So that's great. That's such great awareness. I think that people think that there's something wrong with them, or, why can't they be like everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
But what do you see as the strengths of being sensitive and empathic?
So I actually love talking about the strengths because then that's the first thing I lead into after I say, so this may be part of who you are, personality wise. There's a portion of our population that is just born naturally more sensitive, and it can become a superpower when you harness your tools to help you become centered and to help you have more awareness. And so I described to them how I have personally used some of these things to learn to use it as a superpower, or turn it into a superpower so that I don't feel so overwhelmed. For me, I give an example of how I discovered crystals to be really helpful because they carry their own vibrational frequencies, that I felt like wherever I went, I felt more protected having crystals in my energy field. And that could be an easy and non-invasive and a little bit less threatening tool, or not even super threatening, because the other things like homeopathy and even essential oils, more people are getting more open to exploring types of stuff like that. But I call it my favorite lazy tool. So
Okay.
I have a lot of people who are like, oh, I've got so much going on, and they just need something that they can do that they don't have to put too much energy and effort into, because as an energy sensitive person who hasn't had the skills, they're already at like 15% in their tank. So there's not much left for them to like put energy effort into until they get more back into them.
So they're kind of depleted, and you
They're
can't
very
be asking
depleted
them to
typically.
go see cranial sacral and
Exactly. Yeah.
take drops every 3 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. They're not quite there yet. So they need something that's an easy tool to get used to, that will just do what it's gonna do. And I say, and at the very least, they're pretty. So, at least they're nice to look at. You can
You
just
can put
carry
them
them
in your
around or wear
pocket.
them. Exactly. And they're not going to harm you in any way by just having a crystal around you. So people tend to appreciate the approach with the crystals. And then from there, I also really teach a lot of people the zip up practice.
Okay.
So for anybody who's not familiar with the zip up practice, I believe it came from Donna Eden. I don't know if you can verify that or not. But I use that as a way of helping people regain their control over their own energy field. And to give them a tangible way of approaching that, I first test their energy field with them in my office. So I use dowsing rods.
Okay.
And if you're not familiar with what dowsing rods are, they are copper rods that are made into an L shape, and they move in a direction that indicates there's an energy field or a water source. And so I take these energy rods and I go from across the room. I have them stand in front of my bookshelf, close their eyes, clear their mind, and I go across the room and I ask them to work with me first, and then I ask it to detect their energy field. And I have a big enough space. I have currently about 500 plus square feet in my office, so I can go far enough away from them to try to test this out. And when I do that, once I get to their energy field, the wands will cross each other to show me that's the edge of their energy field. And if I'm already in their energy field, which does happen, I will go straight, and then eventually they will turn outwards. And that to me is a sign that I'm already in the energy field and I can't detect the edge. So then I have to go backwards, try to go further and see if I can catch the edge a little bit further out. And if I can't, then I have them automatically, and I explain to them, like, I wasn't able to detect your edge. So to me, that means that your energy is outside of this building. So to them, they're like, really? Like, yeah. So let's do this quick practice, and we're going to zip up our energy field. And for anybody who's watching visually, I will do this and I'll verbalize what I'm doing.
Thank you.
Yes. So you're going to imagine like you have a zipper at the base of your root chakra, which is right at the bottom of your pelvis, in between your legs. And I tell people to, as you're zipping up to your nose, to breathe in and imagine your bubble pulling in with your breath. So you're going to zip all the way up to your nose, twist and lock like you have a key, and then throw the key away to the other side. So you're going to take your right arm, using the zipper up from your base of your root chakra up to your nose, twist and lock at your nose on your right side, and then throw it away on your right side. And then do the opposite on your left side, taking your left hand from the base of your root chakra, zipping up to your nose on your left side, twist and lock like you have a key, throw it away on your left side. And then you're going to do the same thing on both sides one more time. Twist and lock, throw it away on the right, twist and lock, pull it up, twist and lock, throw it away on the left. And after 2 sides, I do it once on each side 2 times. After that, I will then go and test the person's energy field again. And almost every single time I've done it, I have detected the edge. Sometimes it goes immediately close to the person's body, within a foot of their body, which is where it's supposed to be, that close. And if it is not a foot from their body, it might be, a few feet still out. Then I have them do the practice again, and then we do the test again to get it back closer to the body. And I explain this to them in saying, your energy field, when it's that far out, we know now with our biofields, they entangle with other people, and they entangle with other people's thoughts and what they're going through and their emotions, especially for a highly sensitive person. And so when we have our bubble too far away from our body, we can start picking up all that stuff, and that adds to the overwhelm. So when you do the zip up, even if it's once a day, you're kind of resetting that bubble, so you're not taking on other people's stuff, and you're bringing your energy back into your own space. So it's just you. And when I teach people that, even kids have found it to be really helpful in just getting themselves to feel more calm and more centered. So I really enjoy teaching that practice.
Thank you. That was a great description, and thanks for sharing that technique. I have program notes that I share with people on Spotify and YouTube, and there we will have a link to ACEP's Resources for Resilience, where I believe they have the zip up video. And just to let people know, you may see slight differences in how it's done. Sometimes people also do behind and lock underneath the nose, and then the front one is from the root, as you said, all the way up and underneath the lip.
Okay.
And then the other one is behind the spine and then around and then under the nose. So you're getting central and governing meridians, which are the 2 main ones, to come together. But to if you're like under the lip or under the nose, like don't worry so much about all the details.
Yeah.
It's the idea of lifting the energy from below up and pulling your energy field closer around you like a coat. And so then it's like having a protection, but also a filter, so that you're not so diffuse, so spread out, and so maybe disconnected from your own core. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I've also found that some people are powerful enough to bring their energy in with just their thoughts.
Yes.
So you may not even need to do the zip up if you are practiced enough with it or are attuned enough in your energy field. You can just do it with thinking about it.
Yep. Very good. Excellent. So I'm going to ask you a different kind of question about sensitivities and get your opinion about it. And so we've talked about highly sensitive people who usually get overwhelmed, let's say with crowds or too much information coming in, and maybe their energy field is expanded, and it needs to kind of be more balanced and closer to themselves. Have you seen that some sensitive people are on the opposite end? They are seeking connection. Maybe they have a harder time going within or having quiet. They get antsy. Maybe some of their intuition comes from like taking risks and breaking boundaries and rules and kind of being on the edge of what we would call acceptable behavior. And that they might come up with a different profile, but are also energy sensitive.
I would say that of people that I have come across with a potential profile look like what you're describing, the people that I have experience with that potential profile typically tend to be men, because they're much more externally focused a lot of the time, and can be just as dysregulated.
Yeah.
So I have worked with men who, and I love working with men too, just because there's just something unique about working with men that I really enjoy. So when I bring them some of these awarenesses of these energy tools, at first they are a little bit more suspicious of them, I find. But when I provide an option, an idea, and they test it out, they're like, yeah, it's not that bad. Or maybe they're a little bit closed off still and not able to go more deeply into their self-awarenesses. I personally feel that that's a cultural programming that from, especially in the older generations, the boys coming in now, we've loved up on them so much more than previous generations of men, that the boys coming in now, I feel like don't have the same hangups as the older generations do. The older generations patterns were definitely more of the, don't be a wuss, make sure that you're a man and men don't cry, and all these things where they've barriered so much of their emotional state that they have a hard time still today being able to open up some of that self-awareness and introspection. So I find that they're more apt to go for a quick adjustment type of thing, something that they can see instant gratification for. So I've worked with men who are more open to homeopathic remedies because it's something that they can do. It's something they can take every day. They want the quick fix a lot of the time. Not to say that that's all of them, but in my experience, the ones that I have worked with tend to want to do the quicker fix to get to a tangible change.
Got it.
And when they've seen the change, maybe that's enough for them for a little while, and then maybe they'll come back later and try to get some more information later. But they usually have a single goal that they want to work on, and then once that goal is addressed, and they're like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good for a while.
The one and done. Yeah,
one and
very
done.
good.
And I do feel like they are probably highly sensitive. They probably could use more stuff, but the openness may not be there as much as working with a female of a similar age group or even in children nowadays.
Got it. Oh, thank you for that. That's really helpful. I think that it helps people in the audience kind of see that this doesn't just show up in one way. That we, because we don't talk about being energy sensitive and energy aware or empathic and picking up on other people's feelings. One of the telltale signs I would see working in family therapy, which I don't do anymore, but used to, was that the kid would be great in school and then come home and fall apart. And they would be like, you hear that they're doing great in school, and then they come home and they're a nightmare, and so it's like, because they're like holding their breath energetically all day, like they're collecting everybody's stuff, and the kids like them and the teachers like them, and they're doing well and they're focusing and they're getting their work done, and then they come home and they're just like spent. There's nothing left. Their nervous system is like raw. And so then you have to kind of like, you can't just go straight to homework, you've got to like,
decompress.
I don't know if they're doing homework anymore. They used to do homework. So, but you have to like get them outside and grounded and barefoot and in
I was
water.
Say, that's what I recommend is earthing for those types of kids.
Yeah. That's so great. So you've shared so many tools and tips. I'm so grateful for you sharing this, and I'm sure the audience is happy to hear more. And I'm wondering, is there anything else about intuition or helpers, healers, and guides, or healing tips from the heart that you'd like to share as we're kind of winding this together today?
So I would definitely say that in my experience, everybody has the ability to tap into their intuition. And it really comes down to the programs that we've learned in our upbringings, and to whether or not we were allowed to have our own voice. So I've seen in the older generations, they have more barriers to opening up to the intuition because they've been programmed to do what other people want to make the other person happy for so many years. People pleasing is a big issue with conflict with intuition. So for the older generations, I tend to work on getting back to setting boundaries with themselves and what their needs are. And that helps them to be able to start opening up to their intuition and their guidance. Because if the boundaries are not there, then they they will not be able to access their intuition, because you really need to hone in on yourself and
Yeah.
tune out everything else in the world to
Yeah.
listen. And with children, I find that they have these kind of like thoughts that come up and these feelings that come up, and then they're looking for permission to kind of listen to them a little bit more. Or it'll come through so fast they don't know how to handle it. And so I help to differentiate with them the head and then I do this with adults as well. How to differentiate your intuition from, external forces and influence. So I always say that the head manipulates, it's always going to come up with reasons and all these things that are externally focused that would prevent you from listening to your gut instinct. The heart makes excuses. So, I feel sad for that person. They didn't mean to hurt my feelings, blah, 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 making excuses. And you might feel flush in your chest when that happens. You might feel flush in your head when you have the manipulating going on, and where it's just not in alignment with who you are. But the gut will never lie. And the gut is definitely, your instinct combined with your experiences, and put those together, and that really creates your intuition. And so I describe to people, you will feel a lightness if it's an appropriate answer for you, or a heaviness if it is not. So you'll get like a twisting in your stomach if something's out of alignment with what you really want, or you get butterflies and feeling like happy energy when you're focused on something that is in alignment with you. So you always want to listen to what your gut says. And for people who are disconnected from their awareness of their body, that's the first step that I work on with them.
Oh, cool. Yeah, great. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that fits in with the research on interoception or body awareness of the unconscious shifts, like how often your heart is beating or how quickly you're digesting your food or something like that, things that we don't pay attention to, but still register in the body and in the mind. And if we can start to pay attention more to that internal body awareness, then it opens the door to intuitive awareness as well. So I think you're onto some real gold here. Oh, thank you so much, Kerri.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. So is there anything else you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
I would just like to say, I think that it really is a superpower to have sensitivities, because there is so much of our world who are disconnected from themselves, disconnected from other people. And I really do feel like the people who are more sensitive to what's going on will help be the people that shift the things that are not working for us. So I encourage everybody to step into their power and really go into exploring more of this stuff if this resonates for you, because you may just be one of the people that's going to be a healer on the path to help other people with the similar things.
Oh, I love that message. Thank you. And that it's good to find other people of like energy fields so that we can encourage each other and build community.
And there's lots of them out there. You just need to go looking for them.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much. You always bring such a bright light to everything that you do.
Thank you for inviting me. I've had a pleasure being here.
Wonderful. Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. If you want to learn more, you can visit my website for podcast and resources at hopshealingtips.com. You can also like, share, and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only and is not providing healthcare advice. Please seek guidance from your professional healthcare team should you need assistance.